So Sony launched their blockchain yesterday called Sonium, which is essentially like a quick TLDR. It's built on OP Stack under Sony Block Solutions. They have like a bunch of partners from like Circle, Astro Network, Chainlink. They built out this ecosystem with this whole idea of like we're building this chain to evoke emotion. So the two statements I see them using over and over again is to evoke emotion and to really like house IP ecosystems. They obviously had like a lot of FUD when they came out because they are kind of building it in like a very centralized way. They can freeze your asset. The blockchain explorer doesn't show things that they don't approve on. So on the timeline, everyone was calling it as like the Fed chain. There were some people who deployed like some meme coins that you could not see, you could not have access to it. So there's like a lot of money that's just like frozen around. So there's just been like a lot of FUD around the ecosystem. I personally have like a very hot take on it. I actually think the approach that they're taking isn't as crazy to how Sony as a company operates to begin with. I feel like a lot of times when we think about wanting consumers to come to Abstract or to Solana or whatever, in some ways, and no one will probably admit this publicly, some ways we are like we want the Web3 current ecosystem to build out tools that the normies come and buy in some form of like exit liquidity or whatever. Whereas what I understand Sony is building, it's like, no, we're building this chain for outside people to start building on the chain and outside consumers to come and start buying. And I don't think that's a very crazy approach because I want to use one example. I have a friend of mine who buys a lot of so derivative artworks in the comic industry is like a big thing. There are specific artists who only do Spider-Man comics or no, Spider-Man artworks or Naruto artworks. They come under derivative artworks, which are allowed legally under their IP laws. So there are very famous artists. I have a friend of mine, he spends hundreds and thousands of dollars of getting these signed prints, signed artworks, limited edition. So tomorrow, if Sony has certain IPs under their ecosystem and they are like, okay, B-Check is like an artist and he wants to build something that's under the Sony IP and he wants to be a derivative artist, he can come and mint his artwork on Sony ecosystem. It's a great way for them to really capitalize on that side of industry because I don't think any major company, whether it's DC, whether it's Marvel, has like really made money on passively on like secondary form of like artists and artworks that are being made. So yeah, I think it is a hot take because it's kind of moving away from like a slightly decentralized network. But I feel like in my view there's a difference between decentralized technology and decentralized IP. And I think that's a conversation a lot of people don't like to have. Even like we've had this struggle on like ApeChain. When ApeChain launched, they had Bored Apes with blue backgrounds and people are like, okay, would Bored Ape DMCA this? Or on base you had like fog and a bunch of NFT collections literally changing that background. And like we don't talk about this, that oh, this is actually a problem, we don't want this. And big IP ecosystems, even like Pudgies, even like Azukis wouldn't want that. So I think it's kind of a hard take, but I think the direction that they're going isn't very crazy in my opinion.
Fantastic summary and very, very helpful take there. The thing that I was just going to back you up from I think this is copy pasted a little bit of a screenshot from how Sony are thinking about it in their IP and contracts restriction section. They say, at Sonium, we are committed to fostering a secure and respectful ecosystem for all stakeholders while safeguarding intellectual property rights and protecting users from malicious activities. Why we have this restriction system: protecting intellectual property rights, mitigating risks to users, building a healthy ecosystem. I think it is a reasonable thing. I've been having some conversations with people in the Story Protocol ecosystem. I wonder if there's a way, and maybe there will be a way, to respect your creativity. Like if you want to launch something which is linked to something else in some way, but by the person from whom you are inspired, be able to, in an on-chain way, be able to connect those two things, just to give them like a shout out, to show your respect to that thing. So I was chatting to the guys from Mycelium yesterday, who are, working out on some ideas on how to be able to do that. Before this, I was a lawyer as well. So I think, but the problem is with the IP, it's kind of got out of control. Right? And I think a lot of people have thought because it's got out of control, well, there is no way to control this. Everyone therefore should be able to do what they want. If you work really hard on IP, like I completely sympathize with the companies that want to protect it. And I think to your point, Rahim, there are companies within this industry. It's not like this is only legacy media, Web 2, someone's who want to. It's not like only Marvel that would want their IP protected. Like Bored Apes, Azuki, like there's very significant IP in Web 3 now that's been made natively that would want their stuff to be protected now. So look, I don't know the specific details of what they started blocking, and I think people always get a bit triggered when their money gets frozen. And look, that is bad. Like it's not good that their funds have got lost or frozen. I hope that there's a solution for that aspect. But in principle, the concept of trying to make sure IP creators are protected, and then also allowing people to remix stuff and respect their creativity, so long as some type of bond or connection or respect is shown to the original creator, I think would be very, very cool. Legendary, I'll probably come to you last. I know Funky's already got his hand raised. We're running out of time today. Funky, your hand is raised. What are your thoughts on this? Then we'll close off with Legendary.
Just some real quick thoughts. So Astar Network is actually the company that built Sonium. Astar Network wants to be the blockchain of Japan. This is actually a Polkadot chain. So they built a substrate side and then they built an EVM side. This was always the plan. The EVM side, at first they were going to do ZK EVM through Polygon, then they decided to scrap that idea. They've been working with Sony for about 3 years now. There's a separate entity called Startail Labs. Sota Watanabe is the founder and sort of CEO of Astar Network. He is an absolute BD machine. He wants to make Astar the blockchain of Japan. And Sonium, this partnership has been long in coming. So it would be great to try and get Sota on here and talk about this. It's really interesting what they're trying to build with this whole entertainment focus. But in terms of the IP thing, I think you guys have really covered it well. You kind of have to protect some of this stuff. And Sony is such a huge brand. There's too much for them to lose. And not being so. I think a middle ground is probably the best approach. But I just wanted to give you some of that backstory and context for Sonium and Astar.
I love it. If you can get hold of the founder, then yeah, that'd be fantastic to have that bigger conversation. We're doing those interviews every Friday. There will be one published this week, not done live, and then from next week we're going to be live again with those interviews. So we'd appreciate that, Funk. Final thought, Legendary, from you. Close us out. What's your final conclusion here?
Yeah, I personally not as negative towards that centralized aspect of it, because it's been a direction that we've been going for quite a while. It's the same with the saying by Kyle Samani, partner at Multicoin Capital, who said the future of Ethereum is Coinbase. And Nick Tomino said ETH is the ticker, Base is the dev platform, Coinbase is the distribution. Obviously, you had those issues with Coinbase accounts being frozen. So yes, it goes against the ethos of the original values in crypto, but the scaling for ETH and the distribution that we've seen done successfully has been done in a bit more of a centralized way. And I mean, there's also people calling Base the Fed chain for what it's worth. But I think we like centralization.
There are many Fed chains. Yeah. Basically, if you're not allowed to do any single thing that you want whenever you want to do it, it's basically a Fed chain.
Fed chain, yeah. And ultimately, look, it's a good Fed chain if numbers go up, if Virtual's ecosystem goes up. It's a good Fed chain if Blast had a hack and then they can close the bridge and the hacker's funds are contained and can be returned to the users. Centralization is very good. And centralization is bad when we don't like it because our accounts get frozen. And I feel like we are far away from a perfect answer to how to basically have the best of both centralized and decentralized aspects. And I feel like every blockchain is trying to figure out what their own personal best approach is, depending also on the environment where they're coming from. And ultimately, you as the user have the freedom of choice to interact with the chains that you like and that align with your values, but also you have the freedom to criticize what you don't like. And I feel like this conversation will be helpful to get closer to a good answer of how that balance between centralization and decentralization will look like in the future.
Well, I can't finish it off better than that. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We've gone a little bit over today, 5 minutes over, but just a reminder, if you're new here, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X video on YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify podcasts too. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we will see you back tomorrow. Bye-bye.